What is going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning into another edition of On the Road to Victory. I am your host, Jimmy Smith, and I hope you're all having yourselves a fantastic weekend. We are here. It's Sunday. Storm a brewing out there, so thought I'd give you a little something to sit down by the little fireplace, light you a candle, listen to the rain, and talk a little birds. So we talked about, the best available free agents. You guys have been asking who the Eagles should sign, this, that, the other thing. And I thought, well, let's take a little look here, recap what kind of free agents we have going on. So we've recapped what's happening in free agency. I'll do that again as moves continue to be made. But we're going to take a look at the Eagles depth chart, see what the team looks like, the positions of need rankings. So we'll talk about where I think the Eagles need to address. Then we'll look at all the free agents. And then, of course, the top fits for the Eagles out of those free agents. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Appreciate you guys hitting that like button, sharing, subscribing. Love to hear from you down below in those comments, whether you're watching this now, watching this later, whenever it may be. It's a little after 5 o'clock here. So if any of these players get signed after that, they obviously are no longer available. But I appreciate you all taking the time. Let's jump right into this bad boy and let's take a look at what the Eagles depth chart looks like currently. And remember, we still have a lot of cap space, around 20 million. The exact numbers aren't out right now, so can't give you an exact number, but we've got enough space, and it only costs a couple, maybe a little bit more than, $2.5 million, $3 million to get your draft pick signed. Promise you, whoever's putting out those other numbers, they're just wrong. But we've got a lot of money, so do whatever you please, and we've got the draft coming up. So looking at offense, brought back Van Sumeren, fantastic. Now, you let Mekhi Becton walk. Tyler Steen, he was drafted for a reason. He is supposed to be the future at right guard. We're going to find out. He will be competing with the new addition, Kenyon Green, last year's draft pick, Trevor Keegan, and anybody else that they want to add there. But everything else, pretty much the same. We'll see if Dallas Goedert gets traded. We've talked about it. Look, I'd like to see his predecessor drafted and get to learn a year under him. But, you brought in Harrison Bryant, brought in Kylan Granson. They'll compete with Calcaterra, Jenkins, Latu, and Muse. So we've got some competition there, but still very questionable to see what they do with Goddard. Now, behind our trio of receivers, is Wilson and Smith going to be enough? Do we need to add there? And running back, you got A.J. Dillon. Avery Williams, more of just your return guy, but, Shipley's here to be the number 2. You got quarterbacks. So the offense, I feel pretty good about it. The defense is where, you lost Milton Williams, Josh Wetba, Ajomo, and Jalen Hunter are supposed to step in and let's go. Zach Bond. He is brought back. That was the number one concern. We get him back. Hell yeah. Darius Slay is gone. Kaylee Ringo. He is here for a reason. But you brought in Adoree Jackson. Maybe he'll push him. Then you have Sidney Brown stepping in for C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Look to, possibly add there in free agency or the draft. So definitely some question marks. But you brought in free agents. You have guys that have been drafted the last couple of years that it's time to step up. So we'll find out this offseason how guys look, and if they, feel they have a hole somewhere, they can continue to add players. They can trade. They can do whatever they want. So just stay patient throughout this offseason. And then in the specialist department, you actually brought in Charlie Hewlett, so a new long snapper here, no longer Rick Lovato. And then you've got Avery Williams, who can do both punt and kick returns. And Nia Smith could do the same. Can these guys compete, push each other? But Dotson, Shipley there, you've got other guys that can return. So we've actually got some competition. Feel pretty good about the specialist department now. But the draft is, coming up, and you can always add to all these positions. But that's what the team looks like. You can tell me how you feel about this, and, well, you can give me your own positions of need rankings. But I'm going to show you how I have these positions ranked and where I think the Eagles should be focusing on, and not necessarily have to in free agency, but in the draft, we're going to focus on a lot of these. But as you can see, safety for me, getting rid of C.J. Gardner-Johnson, that is somewhere where I would look to add, because you've got Sidney Brown, McCollum, Seen, Andre Sam, that's great, but, maybe a veteran presence just in case things don't work out. And then at the edge, I love Uche. He was one of my top fits. Loved Jalen Hunt. He was one of my top fits for the draft last year. So very excited about these guys with Nolan Smith. And, you brought back Patrick Johnson. You got Bryce Huff. We'll see what happens there. But I would still, you want a nice rotation looking to the future. Maybe, adding a veteran presence to help would be huge, or maybe you draft another guy. But we'll find out. Now, corner, interior D-line, linebacker, a lot of these positions where, young guys are going to have to step up, like at linebacker with Nakobe Dean. He might be ready for the beginning of the season, but we don't know. So that's a tricky one there. Interior D-line, you're hoping Ojomo steps up. You're hoping Ringo steps up, but, I'm not against adding competition there. And then at wide receiver, I like Dotson at 3, but if anything happens, who steps in? Nye Smith, Johnny Wilson, can they continue to develop? So maybe you add there. But tackle, guard, center, I'm looking for depth at those positions. I think Steen can get it done as the starter, but, I'm always about having depth, and they are too. Now, tight end, again, that would jump up the list if you get rid of Dallas Goedert, but hey, maybe you trade him to someone and get a tight end in return. I don't know. We'll see what maybe you get a Kyle Pitts. I know a lot of people have asked about him. A lot of options out there. And, there are some free agent options still available as well. And then specialist, just talked about, feel pretty good there. Fullback, we've got Van Sumeren. Maybe you want to add competition, but I'd be okay because he doesn't really get used much. A couple of plays a game, if that. And, he helps on special teams. Running back, I feel really good there. And quarterback, obviously, I really like the room with McKee at 2 and Dorian Thompson-Robinson at 3. So that's how I feel about it. But you guys can let me know how you feel about this Eagles team, where you have these positions ranked. Let's take a look at all of the remaining free agents here that I have as the top guys at each position. So 175 of them. We're going to go through each position. You guys can let me know how you feel about these positions, who you like from these positions, whatever is on your mind. Love to hear from you. But we'll start it off with quarterback. And, again, I feel like this is our strongest position. Don't need any of these guys, but Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson still out there. Jameis Winston. You see Carson Wentz is out there. Trey Lance, Tyler Huntley, Drew Lock. You've got some options if your team needs a quarterback or a backup if you don't get one of those top 2 guys. So, slim pickings after that. But then at the running back position, Nick Chubb still out there, and obviously that injury history is going to hold people back. But I still think, with a little left in the tank in the right situation, he can do well. You got J.K. Dobbins, who looked good last year, Jeff Wilson, Jamal Williams, Cam Akers. You've got, some intriguing options out there at running back. But again, for me, I feel like the Eagles are pretty good there. If they wanted to add like a fullback, there are a few options: Adam Prentice, Burton, Burns. So there are a couple free agents that are still left if you wanted to add someone to compete with Van Sumeren. But again, it's not a position we use a lot of. So, hey, there are options. Now, wide receiver, I put 20 of them here because, well, we're looking at a lot of names here and a lot of, decent players here that I think could fit that 4 or 5 role for the Eagles. And, there are guys like Diggs and Keenan Allen still out there, Amari Cooper. Tyler Lockett was released, Brandon Cooks. So a lot of names that could definitely go out there and help some teams here. Some back-end guys like Rondale Moore, Elijah Moore that we've talked about here on the show. But, if you're looking for a high-end guy, you've still got a couple options out there. So some good receivers still available, guys like Deontay Johnson quitting on their team. Maybe a new change of scenery would help them out. But there are definitely some guys there. And then at tight end, as I mentioned, maybe you trade for somebody, Kyle Pitts, a Michael Mayer. But, there are guys like Mo Alley Cox, Conklin, Gerald Everett's out there, Keene, Atkins, Zomo's still out there, Pruitt. So you've got a few options out here if you're looking for a tight end in this free agency class. But those are the best available at that position. And then at tackle, I'm okay with adding depth. I think we might look to get younger. So I'd probably look more, into this draft. But if you want a versatile piece here, somebody that can help you in, multiple spots like Jack Driscoll did, or, many names throughout the years, but that swing tackle role, maybe some of these back end guys. But you've got starting caliber guys: Robinson, Noteboom, Tyron Smith, Jedrick Wills. So we'll see where these guys end up. But I think the Eagles, might look for some depth there. Then at guard, you've got a couple of guys, and maybe you bring some guys in to compete for that starting job. Brandon Scherf, Will Hernandez, Tevin Jenkins out there, Dalton Reisner, Sua Opeta out there, even though he missed all of last year. But some good options if you're looking for some interior help. And then at center, where the Eagles don't have a backup center, clearly Landon Dickerson can help there. But Nick Gates, our former center, you see him there. there are a few options out here in free agency if the Eagles wanted to add there. But that is the offensive side of the ball. Those are all the free agents that I have listed as the best available. Maybe there's some other names. There are plenty of other names still out there. So let me know how you're feeling about it, who you would add on this offense. But let's jump into the defense now and take a look at the best available here. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on who you would add. We'll start the interior D line. And yeah, you lost Milton Williams, but Ajomo, Booker, Byron Young, Gabe Hall, all promising, young prospects. So do you bring in, a veteran to come help out? Do you bring in someone just to push these guys' depth? There are options for both. Calais Campbell still out there. We'll see if he even wants to come back for another year. But a very talented interior guy that, versatile skill set and can help you on the edge in certain, he can play that odd and even fronts. He would be a good fit for the Eagles, but some other options there as well. And then the edge guys, this is obviously a position where Uche is added, but, we don't know what's happening with Bryce Huff. Patrick Johnson's more of your special teamer. So with Smith and Hunt and Uche, do you want to add another piece? And I, would love to have Brandon Graham back, but I think he retires, goes out on a high note. So maybe you bring in another veteran piece like him to help these younger guys, or you just bring in another depth piece. But there are definitely some options here. As you can see, the 20 listed here, the best available: Von Miller, Matt Judon, Zadarius Smith, Preston Smith. There's definitely some good names out there, some guys with a lot left still in the tank, some other guys like Azeez Ojulari, and then another former Giant, Oshane Jimenez there, where maybe in the right situation, in the right scheme and system that they could flourish, but definitely some options if you need. Now at linebacker, we've mentioned Nakobe Dean. We'll see how long it takes him to come back. So maybe you don't go after CJ Mosley or Kaiser White. Much love to Kaiser White, but there are options for some back end guys. EJ Speed's a great addition, but I think he should be a starter somewhere. I don't know that the Eagles will be able to spend, that. I don't think they will give, when they've already spent so much at linebacker. I think they kind of depend on more depth pieces with what we already have. So you just hope that Nakobe Dean's healthy, and then maybe you look at a Troy Reeder, a Joe Bocci. Definitely some options to look at in this back end of guys here. But I would definitely keep my eye on linebackers because obviously you only have Dallas Gant and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. behind Bond and Dean there. So I would definitely look at free agents and keep my eye on the draft. Now at corner, you've got some pretty good corners left. Asante Samuel Jr., Gilmore, Douglas, Okudah, Fuller, Hilton. I mean, that's some pretty good corners still available. Definitely some starting caliber guys out there. So, if your team is in need, and I think the Eagles clearly, hopeful for Kaylee Ringo there. You brought in Adoree Jackson, you got Eli Ricks here. So you have a little competition, but maybe you look into the draft, but maybe you look to add a veteran presence that can push these guys and, provide what Bradbury and Slay did and Isaiah Rodgers. So now, you're without those three guys looking to add maybe a veteran presence in the room. Obviously very excited about Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell's future, but, you need another one. So hopefully Ringo steps up, but let's push him. Now, the safeties here, you've got some real good ones here. Justin Simmons is left. Marcus Williams was just released. Julia Blackman, Rayshawn Jenkins, Poyer, Thornhill, Fuller, Diggs, Kazee. There's a plethora of names here that, guys that can provide depth behind Brown, or maybe guys that can push Brown for that starting spot. So definitely a position of need. I had that as my number one. So I'll be looking at a couple safeties here. We'll talk about them. But let me know your thoughts on the defense, where you would add. But we're going to jump right into this and get into my top fits. And I'm going to show you my top 6 first, and then we'll look at the full list. Wasn't able to make graphics for every single one of those 15 guys, but I did have one that we already talked about. It was going to be a top 5, but let's look at number 6, and it doesn't have his college or anything like that, like all the other ones will, because, again, this is from the show a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about the linebackers. And I think Isaiah Simmons, with his skill set, I really think you could get him super cheap, and you could find a way with, Vic Fangio to use him as that weapon. And I really think, he's had some down years. He's not great in coverage, so you don't really want him back there. But I think with his skill set, athleticism, in the right system, somebody unlock this kid, only 26 years old. I think, it's a low cost, high reward kind of thing. So you hope that he pans out. But just wanted to bring him up as number 6 here. But let's get into these top 5. And one of these is an edge. And then we'll I'm only sticking with the positions that we talked about. So that was an honorable mention, right? But these positions are the top 3 positions of need. So I wanted to talk about some players here. And Von Miller, man. Look, I know he's a big name, but the dude still has a lot left in the tank. And, as last year, they have got some studs over there. So didn't have to start any games, just like Brandon Graham. Only played 279 snaps now. He was suspended for 4 games. But, dude, still got that pass rush, still good against the run. Had 6 sacks, 3 quarterback hits, 32 pressures, 7 tackles for loss on 17 tackles. So, look, this is going to be his 15th season. He is 35 years old. He did actually miss an entire season 1 year, but because of injury. But he's 6'3", 250. We know who Von Miller is. And if you add him with Nolan Smith and Jalen Hunt and Josh Uche and, you get rid of Bryce Huff or you keep him, whatever. But you've got depth here, man. You've got a veteran presence that I really think, I would not be against at all. And, guys like Zadarius Smith, I'd actually probably take that. But I think you could get Miller a little bit lower just because he's getting older. And the promise of trying to get that Super Bowl, I think, could possibly bring him in. So I wouldn't be against it at all. I know a lot of you have asked about it. And I would have been cool with Khalil Mack. But he went back to the Chargers. So it is what it is. But let me know how you feel about that. And speaking of Chargers, well, this is a name a lot of you asked me about, and Asante Samuel Jr. Look, he definitely is not panned out, and I think obviously having the name he does, it's going to put a lot of pressure on you. But, he ended up having a shoulder injury, getting placed on IR last year, only played in 4 games, 234 snaps, 87.3 passer rating allowed there, 2 passes deflected in those 4 games. So take it all with a grain of salt, your little PFF numbers and all that stuff, but this is a kid that he does have a good skill set. And I think that, he's a little guy, but bring him in, see if you can't unlock what he has and, allow him and Ringo to battle it out. And, you can allow Ricks to go with him. But if you can sign him for cheap, why not? Give him a shot. I'm not against it. You're looking for another starting caliber corner. And I, again, would probably look into the draft if, you feel that way, but I think that you could bring him in, and I think, I'm a little more sold than I was before on him, and the fact that he hasn't been signed, because, look, he definitely has had his struggles, and the injury is not going to help, but I do think he has talent, and I think it can be unlocked, and I would not mind, taking a shot at it at the right price. Now, a corner I'd probably rather have, now, former Cowboy, Chidobe Awuzie, who drafted back in the 2nd round back in 2017, spent time with the Bengals, and then got himself a big payday from the Titans. But, I think he definitely, with that groin injury he had last year, missed a lot of the season. So started 7 games of the 8 he played, had 373 defensive snaps, but 74.1 passer rating allowed, did have an interception with 4 passes deflected, a forced fumble in there, but he's 29 years old, and we talk about that veteran presence for the safeties. Well, for the corners as well. And this is a dude that brings toughness that I like his game. I really do. I am a fan of Awuzie. I think he's really good against the run. I thought at times last year in coverage, he definitely had his struggles, but a good passer rating allowed there. He missed a couple of missed tackles last year, only gave up 14 receptions. I thought, overall he had a good year, and just with that injury and not having like superstar numbers with interceptions and passes deflected, that you could get him at a decent price. And I think he could be a steal of a deal if you pair him with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. I think he would be a good fit for this Eagles defense. Now let's get into this. And this is tough for me because I want to say, let's just go with 1A and 1B. And I really did have him at number 1 all the way up until I made this. But I love Justin Simmons. I'm a fan of his game. But let's be real, he's going into his 10th season here and wasn't exactly great in coverage or great against the run last year, but he did play for the shitty Falcons. So I'll try to understand that. But 105.1 passer rating allowed. You can see 2 picks, 7 passes deflected, 2 tackles for a loss in here. And look, I, again, have talked about this over and over again. The fact that he is familiar with Vic Fangio and his defense, and then Christian Parker, the defensive backs coach who used to be there at the Broncos with him. So you've got that familiarity. He's 31. He's still got some left in the tank. And I think, he's a good leader. I think he's somebody that could come in here and he would fit right in. You put him with Reed Blankenship. You have Sidney Brown as that weapon. You hope that he can help him for 1 year, help Brown really grow into that role as the starter. But you could get Simmons cheaper than you had CJ Gardner-Johnson for. So you bring in a guy that knows the system and I think would play it pretty well. So for me, this would be a no-brainer. I would add him. Let's call it 1B because I did really have him as my number one fit forever. But then all of a sudden, Julian Blackmon, just, I had him at 2 for the longest time, but he's younger, dude. And I just feel he might cost a little bit more, but he's somebody that is, in my opinion, a little bit better in run, but much better in coverage. And he doesn't, it only has like a half a sack, but this kid can actually rush the quarterback. He only had 1 pressure last year, but I promise you that's something he can do. He had 3 interceptions there, and he had 4 passes deflected, a 91.5 passer rating allowed, tackle for a loss, fumble recovery in there. But this is a kid that still has a lot of upside. He's only 26 years old, and I struggled to put him at number 1 at first because, well, I don't know that we need like a young guy, because we have Sidney Brown in the wings, and I don't want to create that where you're trying to pay multiple guys. Maybe just a 1-year deal for Justin Simmons is more realistic. So a 1A, 1B for me. But Julian Blackmon, we talked about him last year, if you remember. Big fan of his game. I would have brought him in then, and I'll bring him in again this year, right now, as the Eagles, I think, could use a little veteran presence there at safety. Love Reed Blankenship, love what you're doing there, but create that competition. You still want to draft somebody? I'm all about it. So we'll be talking about that draft in a couple of weeks here. Less than it's draft season's coming, baby. So I'm excited. Hopefully you've been enjoying this sicko season. I know there's a lot of negative talk about the Eagles free agency. A lot of people confused about how everything works. That's okay. They do this every year. They don't understand that Howie is building a dynasty for the future. Those players were going to be gone. We were going to acquire those compensatory picks and draft picks while we traded players away. We had guys we had already drafted and signed to be part of the future. That is exactly what will happen. Let them keep sleeping on our birds. I promise you they will regret it. But that's all I've got for you here tonight. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor, hit that like button, share this bad boy, subscribe, and join the family. But stay safe out there, everybody. I can hear the rain beginning. The storms of Narnia are upon us. So I appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully you all had a great weekend. Have a great week coming your way. But if you need anything, you can always reach out. Always here for you guys as you are for me. But all I've got for you. So until Drifter, and I never showed you. So I'm going to try to clip that part out maybe, or maybe we'll just run it. We'll run it, right? But here are my top 15 fits. Unreal. Just completely forgot about it. But I threw a couple more safeties in there. Marcus Williams was released. Jordan Poyer still, a veteran presence that could help. Zadarius Smith at edge. You see the corners we talked about. And then I picked 1 at each of the positions that were next on the list. So Calais Campbell, Isaiah Simmons, Rondale Moore, Pete, Opeta, Lemieux, Mo Alley-Cox. So mostly depth pieces on that other side. And, I feel that this team already has a lot of the pieces it needs right there for you. So now that is all I've got for you. My Lord, almost forgot there. But bear with me. Been a long week, long weekend. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend. But I promise that's all I've got for you here tonight. So until next time, I'm Jimmy Smith, and this is On the Road to Victory. You all stay safe out there. And as always, go Birds!